Welcome to the Mindful Haven podcast, which today focuses on financial issues parents and caregivers of children battling life-threatening illnesses and disabilities face. Today's episode, When Illness Hits Home, Finding Financial Clarity in Crisis. And that is the truth for sure. When families have a child with a life-threatening illness or disability, their finances are devastated many, many times. The financial burden of caring for a child with a life-threatening illness or disability can be overwhelming. Between medical bills, lost income, and travel for treatment, many families face economic hardship that adds immense stress and impacts their mental health. Without support, the pressure can become unbearable. Families of children with life-threatening illnesses often face crushing financial strain, and studies have shown over 60% of these families experience significant income loss, with one parent frequently forced to stop working. For example, a mother of a child with leukemia may leave her job to manage the hospital stays, treatments, and round-the-clock care. While bills pile up and savings disappear, this financial stress deeply affects your mental health. This is compounding an already overwhelming situation. Support isn't just helpful, it's essential. Joining us today is Terra Brown, Executive Director who leads the private business advisory and life science practices for the Palm Beach office of JP Morgan Private Bank. She collaborates closely with clients and their families to gain a deep understanding of their immediate and long-term financial goals. Terra began her career at the private bank in 2006 as a portfolio manager, where she was responsible for implementing investment strategies and executing portfolio construction. She holds a bachelor's degree in family financial management from Ohio State University and an MBA with specialization in entrepreneurship from Ashland University. Coincidentally, last week marked 20 years of marriage and 20 years at JP Morgan. She got married on Saturday and started working at JP Morgan. Now that is dedication from the get-go, Terra.
Who needs a honeymoon? You know, it took us 10 years to get there, but we made it.
Oh my gosh. Terra also serves on the Chasin board of directors. She is married with 2 sons. Welcome, Terra. It's so great to have you here and to elaborate on the financial implications that so many of the families we serve deal with and how they best can navigate their new circumstance. I have seen so many families lose everything in their effort to save their child's life. Often one parent is forced to lose their job. They have to. Someone's got to stay in the hospital with their child, become the full-time caretaker. And if you're a single parent, the financial implications are immediate. So today we're going to talk about finances and how families that are going through an illness or lifelong disability work their way through that, and then how, after it's over, how you recoup from that. So let's dive right in.
That's great.
And seriously, thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited. So why don't we talk about, I know a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck, right? I know I am. So if you threw something in my family that I either no longer had an income or I had to navigate these massive costs coming at me, like, it spirals immediately, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly where it comes down to, is that expenses are rising and income is decreasing. So it's kind of hitting the family on all sides, and then putting in the mental health aspect of dealing with a child that is battling a life-threatening illness can really just be devastating on the entire family altogether. And it's something that, you know, again, throughout the treatment process it doesn't go away. So it's going to be that burden. And I think a lot of the times what we see with these families is that the mom, like you had mentioned, may stay back and do the hospital stays, but splitting up time. But there's so many underlying costs that are associated that I think a lot of these families can be able to share with others because of the fact that, again, you know, let's say that, you know, the parents don't get a meal inside the hospital. That's their own expense, you know, driving back and forth between the number of hours and gas to the different various appointments. And so hopefully today, what I can do is kind of walk through some helpful tips, as well as just being able to provide some best practices to try and ease a little of the burden.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, what you're saying is such the truth. You know, at Chasing a Dream, we've now provided almost $1.4 million to these families to assist with their housing, food, transportation, things to just get them through their child's illness. And like you were saying, food. So food is a major, major consideration. First of all, I don't really know anybody that likes hospital food. So, I mean, really, you just don't, right?
Exactly.
And so not only is the child probably not eating, but the hospitals don't provide a meal for the families.
Mhm.
So to be able to afford to DoorDash or even, where are you going to keep your food and can you safely keep your food and you don't even know what you want. So food becomes an issue and a big expense. If let's say the family's gone to Nicholas Children's, driving back and forth to Miami every day or, every other day, the price of gas. I mean, it is just tremendous. So yeah, their finances too, they take a big hit, they take it fast, and then that starts drawing off of their savings, if they have a savings. And thankfully, to some families, there are resources in the hospital while your child's there. But now you've depleted your savings, right? And so it just snowballs. And is there something, what do you recommend? So let's say that I get, I'm a new family and we get a diagnosis. It's hard to tell that family, hey, by the way, you need to start putting away this money to plan for this because you're still in shock.
Absolutely.
So,
I do. I feel like, a budget is not the first thing that you're going to be thinking about once you receive a diagnosis.
right.
Of course, I think that, again, the reason why I became a part of Chasing His Dream is because of these families that you're able to step in and to be able to navigate that initial shock, but then tell them, let's go ahead and let's try and set out a plan going forward.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the hardest things to do, but having that clarity and knowing what's ahead of you is going to be the most beneficial thing for the family and being proactive instead of reactive. I think that, like you had mentioned, the gas, the food, all of that's going to be the necessities. And of course, that's going to be your main priority along with keeping that child healthy. And so I think that just really sitting down and creating a budget for you and your family and making the family involved with that budget so that they know what expenses are being made and what is acceptable for you and your family. You also mentioned that I know that there's a lot of individuals that if they have a savings account or a retirement account, that starts to get depleted as well. So I would recommend, of course, looking into organizations that are within the hospital system itself. Obviously, Chasing a Dream does as much as we can as well. But those are all things that I think could be extremely beneficial, especially during the initial diagnosis stage when you just feel like the world's falling apart.
Right. Yeah. So how do you think, we give the backpack, we first come in, they get their backpack, and that's really to just be that transition for the child coming in there. But I wonder if there wouldn't be something that we could create going forward with Mindful Haven that addresses these needs that are coming to them. Like, are there places that they can go? Are there templates or something that they can be like, okay, this is realism, and they're not going to look at it first of all, like right away, right? But it's going to start hitting right away though. But you just can't wrap your brain around that just yet. So if there was something that, they could go to just on their own and be like, look, here's some websites or here's some, is that available?
There is. So there's a lot of information that's out there. And I would say first off is just getting organized around everything. With the amount of time that you're going to be spending outside of the home, passwords, important documents, all of that needs to be accessible. So I think that that's something that, again, being mindful up front and having that all together in one location. A lot of times you can just download a template off of, any website. I don't have a specific one. We have one that we use at JP Morgan that, we do for families that just says, here's my trust documents, here's my passwords, and I'm going to keep them all in one place so that the family is able to access that if you're also spending time trying to take care of a sick child. I would say also that there's budgeting tools out there that you can also tie in to the overall kind of organization. And the thing is that eventually it becomes routine to you. So it's not the perfect time to put this into place if you haven't already, but it will become routine and make the situation a little bit easier to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about budgeting.
Sure.
I mean, I know throughout the course of my life, there have been different times where, I was never a good budgeter for sure whatsoever. It's like when my money ran out when I was young, I was like, okay, I have 3 days before I can eat again.
Yes.
I can't get gas in my car. But, you had a group of friends and it was like, okay, we'll figure this out. Right. So it's not as important. But like, how do you really just budgeting 101? What are the things because a lot of the families that we deal with, right, they don't really have a budget. They were like me, they're young,
right.
That it's, most of our families are young. So let's talk about how to budget. Like, how do you budget?
Absolutely. I can say that my husband and I just mentioned that we've been together for 20 years. And when we first started off together, peanut butter and jellies were our weekly lunch because of the fact that we had to pack. We weren't able to go out. We had rent to pay. Mm-hmm. And so these type of things, really, it's just a mindset. You really have to get yourself in that mindset. And even if you feel like, oh, it's only $5 that I'm saving here, those $5 do add up over time. And I think that what you can also do is, again, write down what are the necessities for your family. Yeah. How much are you spending in that DoorDash or Uber Eats that you probably could cook one meal at home a week? Yeah. Or, let's contact the electricity or utility companies to see if there's anything for a financial hardship that you can uncover. I think all of these things combined can really take a budget to the next level and have a just tremendous impact on the family's overall balance sheet.
Yeah. So you grab a pen and a piece of paper. I know that's to this generation. That's not okay. All right. Get your phone. I mean, it does have budgeting. There is budgeting software stuff, but I don't know that that's the best. I mean, I like pen and paper because you're seeing it, but I also think you need to have that conversation. So, if you're a mom and, 2-income family, let's say, so you go through this, now you're a 1-income family. So what are they listing here? They're listing what their food is costing them. And like you said, maybe you don't need Starbucks this week, cut out the Starbucks and now all of a sudden you can, buy some chicken or,
and I know all of these things seem very trivial, but they really do compound into a much larger effect. And so that's the one thing that I always have told myself as well as clients is just being able to teach also that next generation why and how you're doing this. Some people like the pen and paper. Some people like to stick the cash in the envelope. Some people are, completely ChatGPT templates, have everything there. It's completely preference, but at the same time, just getting it down on some type of paper or technology is really going to set you up for success.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you really do have to look at this as a crisis mode, and to get through this. And there are services out there like Chasin a Dream, particularly for an oncology patient, but not so much for other diagnoses that there's just, there's not a lot there. And so you've got to really look at this because when somebody comes to us, it's a crisis. They haven't paid their mortgage in 3 months and, they're like, well, we don't like asking for help. I totally understand that. But if you can figure out what it is that you can make do with, like, I can't tell you how many times I will get families and they'll give me their FP&L bill. And it's like every month, it's like 300 and something for an apartment. I was like, get out of here. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, okay, we got
air conditioner on 65.
Exactly. Right. Like the kids keep turning it down. Okay. Now you're going to have to stop that. Like there are things that you really have to work at, right? Because it is the long term. And so, budgeting, absolutely being organized. One of the things we put together in the backpack is a planner for the mom. I think use that, right? Like really, not that you have to write down your your passwords or anything like that, but put down, what appointments and what your costs are, your copays and everything like that, so that you can really look at it and utilize the tools that are available there. So for the families, like the single mom or dad, right? Or the families living paycheck to paycheck, there's Is there deferral stuff? Like, what if you've got student loans? What are some of the things that they can look at deferring?
No, absolutely. So I think, just going back to the initial discussion around, okay, I'm in this crisis. What do I do? And that's the type of thing that these resources, I think, that we'll share today are going to be extremely beneficial. So you mentioned student loan deferral. So taking that kind of even a step further is that, with a student loan deferral, along with utilities, a lot of these companies understand that you're going through a hardship. So reach out. It never hurts to ask. What's the worst thing they're going to say? No, right. You at least made the opportunity to try and help facilitate a better outcome at that point. Wow. And then I would say too, taking that just a step further, and I think this is something that's really important for a lot of families when they're going through any type of a medical strain, especially in regards to their finances, is to be able to remember when you're doing your taxes at the end of that year is to calculate your medical expenses. One of the main things and a huge deduction for families that, again, the last thing you want to do is feel like you have no budget, no income, and then get hit by a tax bill at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So what it is that the IRS will allow you 7.5% of your medical expenses based off of what they refer to as your adjusted gross income. So with that, this is
Can you explain that?
Yeah.
Adjusted gross income and everything.
So adjusted gross income is going to be your total income that's subject to IRS taxes. That's only going to be deducted by IRA contributions or anything that's on a pre-tax dollar basis. So really it's just the salary that you're making. And of course the IRS is going to want their cut of that. So,
of course,
Uncle Sam always has to get their cut.
Not my favorite uncle.
Oh, but just to kind of, again, take a step back and walk through this slowly. So let's say that a family has, for round numbers, we'll say $50,000 in income per year.
Okay.
Let's say their medical expenses ended up being over $10,000 this year. So what the IRS allows you to do is they're allowing you to deduct up to $6,250 off of your income, because that is going to be that 7.5% of the overall adjusted gross income. So a very, very significant tax benefit for these families.
For sure. And how do they go about doing that? They just have to keep all of their receipts, or is this part of like the journaling and keeping?
It is. You're exactly correct. So you always want to keep everything for auditing purposes. Gosh forbid if that, were to come down. But the one thing is too, is that a lot of families think it's just the bills that you're receiving from the hospital.
Yeah.
This is going to be any type of medical equipment that children need. Let's say you're making home improvements so that there's a ramp going into the home because of, these are all going to be things that the IRS looks at as part of a medical expense. So something that I think can really be beneficial to families. And I don't know if a lot of individuals know that it's out there to be taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had no idea about that. I know, obviously that's what I would just save for my medical bills is just the medical bill. I wouldn't think ramps. Or what about for a child that maybe is tube fed? They're feeding all their equipment, everything. What about children that their needles, their everything, any kind of medical supply like that?
Yeah. And you can always double check with your accountant or the IRS rules if you kind of feel like there's a gray area, but really think outside the box because those are expenses and those are medical expenses. So again, it's there for a reason and it's always something that I like to mention to families.
For sure. Do you think that it would be hotel stays while your child is in the hospital or gas getting down to Miami, or let's say they go to St. Jude or something like that? All of that whole thing, their meals, everything while they're there?
Yeah. So you'll definitely, as long as you can tie that back with an audit to say that, this is why you expensed on these days. But again, it's something that's extremely beneficial and money back into the family's pocket immediately.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll bet you most people don't know that. So that's awesome. Well, we can end this now. We're just like, we're good to go. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So what are some other things that they could do, that you would say to a family that is living paycheck to paycheck, and they're not going to have an accountant,
Right.
and let's say they're in their 20s, their early 20s, and they're doing
TurboTax, and they're doing their own taxes if they
Exactly.
have the time to do them, because of course everything else that's going on in life.
Can you still do this if you just do that easy for it? No, it has to be deductions.
It has to be an itemized
Okay.
deduction. So you do have to go through and do an itemized return.
Right.
But at the same time, it's very easy. And especially with the software and everything that's out there now and it's a question, if you're going through and you're doing your own taxes, then you're going in.
Guess that's where we stop.
That's okay. I can
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay. That was it?
Easy enough. All right. But with the software that's out there in regards to just doing your annual taxes, it's so simplistic that filing an itemized return is just one step ahead of an easy return. So again, something that they can do.
They just need the receipts and
exactly
the times that they went to different. Wow, that's fantastic, because that is such an expense that we pay for families, especially if they're going out of state or even in state for other treatment. That right there is, thousands. That's going to be thousands, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can see how much of a difference it is, even on just a $50,000 salary and over $6,000. That's going to be a deduction from your overall income.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we will definitely have to send something out to families, and maybe we'll create something too, maybe just like a handout or something like that. We can do that. Okay, so let's talk about emergency savings, which I know when I was young, I didn't have at all. And my parents would be like, oh, just take $100 a month and put it here and invest it, and you'll be a millionaire when you retire. And we can see that I'm not there. So it's like, how do you create that without it? I mean, it's too late now for the families that are coming to us, but for the people that are listening to this, it really is important, right?
It is. And I won't give the generic answer that, every financial advisor is, oh, you should have 6 months worth of rainy day savings, because that's not feasible. And especially for individuals in the situations that they are. And I would just say that you're not alone. Like you mentioned, there are so many people that live paycheck to paycheck, and that, you're not a minority. You are the majority. Yeah. And I think that that's something that really just kind of, again, putting that mindset in of that it's not just you, it's going to be those others as well. And so what I would say again is just going back to trying to put that, $5 aside, or, skipping out on that, drive through versus putting something out for dinner. Yeah. Those type of things are great. And of course, with my clients, it's a little bit different because of course they've got the assets to invest. Right. But for these families as well, even just a money market that, if you've got cash what's
a money market?
So money market's going to be what it's going to be comprised of is underlying securities that are going to be U.S. Treasuries, so very, very safe assets. So these money markets, they have what we refer to as daily liquidity. So let's say Lori walks into the bank and Lori says, I'm going to put $100 into this money market. Later that day, Lori says, nah, I'm going to go and I'm going to take that $100 back out. I'm going to give it to Chasin and trade. You can do that.
Good move. Good move. Yeah. don't go buy that dress.
But it's very, very, very flexible. And the thing that is so grateful about that is that you're able to invest your money, and instead of it sitting in your checking account, getting 0% interest, you're getting an actual yield for allowing the bank to hold your money. So it's great because you're not tying it up like a CD where you'd have to wait a certain amount of tenure or time to get your money back. But right now, with where rates are at, it's a great, great vehicle to just be able to park cash. And it doesn't matter how much it is. It can be, $100 or it could be $10,000. It's going to be just beneficial all the way around.
So you could just go to the bank. And I could say, okay, I have $2,000 in savings. Mm-hmm. I want to take that out of my savings and do a money market where I'll get a higher percentage rate, right?
Absolutely.
A higher return. But if I need access to that, I can just go to the bank as if it were in my savings.
Correct.
And take it out, and there's no fee.
Correct. So that's the one great thing about that.
So why do people use a savings account instead of a money market account?
Because they don't know about the money market accounts.
It's one of those secrets that,
And I probably shouldn't say this on air. But banks love when you sit your money in cash because they're not paying you.
Right.
So you're actually paying the bank to hold your money because you're giving up that yield that you could have inside of those money markets. So it really is something that, again, I tell everyone. I even tell I have 2 boys. I tell both of them. My oldest he works here locally and has saved up, once he got his first $1,000, he thought he was rich and going to retire, but he's got to work a little bit longer. But I would say, I told him, I said, don't just leave it in the checking account. Let's get it invested. And especially for the younger individuals, getting it invested even into the market. So putting it into equities for that longer term exposure.
Right. And that's tough in itself, right? I mean, I know I tried that. Well, I don't think I have the patience for this, but, like investing more for the stocks and everything. That's what you're talking about, right? That's an art in itself, isn't it? Unless you do like a 401k, which they do it for you.
Yeah. So I think that it's one of the things, obviously I've been in the industry for over 20 years. So it's intimidating when you walk in. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to buy a stock. Which one? Which one do I buy? Do I buy the Apple or the Microsoft, the ones that we know? Or is there something out there that, my brother-in-law's friend's sister said that this was going to be the new hot stock of the day.
Yeah.
I think really just taking a dedicated approach and finding an individual that will be able just to educate you.
Right.
Perfect example for me, I have a ton of family and they're always, Tara, what do I buy? What do I buy in my 401k? Or I have this additional money on the sidelines. What do I do? And I think just being very fee cautious. And of course, that's the one thing. You don't need a, multi-individual stock portfolio, especially for individuals that don't have a lot to put into the market.
Right.
So I always say, and I'm sure that a lot of listeners have probably heard of this, but again, just another kind of best practice, I would say to leverage what we refer to as ETFs, which are exchange traded funds. They're an extremely low cost way to gain access to the market. And they're also very diversified. So for example, you can buy an exchange traded fund on the S&P 500. So it's going to own all 500 of the largest S&P stocks. So therefore, you're getting very, very cheap access to the market. You're leaving that money alone and watching it grow. And so it's a great way, just again, if you've got some money on the sideline and you have a longer time horizon before you're going to need that cash, to go ahead and put that in place.
And that could be something for families that, they've already gone through the journey, right? And their finances now, they have the opportunity to, they're getting back on their feet. They're figuring out, what it is that, to pay off everything they have, but they don't want to go down that road again. I think once you've been down a really bad financial road, most people are going to be like, yeah, that's not happening to me again. Right. So those are easy ways to just take even a small amount of money and just dedicate that to, almost like you're investing in yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what I've seen, especially with families that have went through hardships and, been at that last few dollars in the account and not knowing, what next month is going to bring, I would say that the discipline that you can create going through this stress has only made them stronger coming out on the other side and more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say that's true. I mean, I know for myself, my early 20s and just being, in pretty bad shape at different times. Now I won't allow that to happen because it's a fear based, right? So yeah, so that's really great. So how do you go ahead and you start the emergency savings, right? Can you create a crisis budget or is that just unrealistic? As a family, you're not going to look at that.
It's one of the things that it sounds good on paper,
right?
But it's just not really a feasible option, especially during the time of an initial diagnosis. Yeah. So I would just say that, yes, it sounds great. And it would be fantastic if you're able to kind of piece out a portion. If let's say you had some income or some savings on the side, to put that aside and make sure that it is available and liquid for you. But at the same time, it's usually, hair's on fire.
Exactly.
What kid's going where, what appointment do we need to get to? So I think finances a lot of times fall to the back burner. And that's where individuals get into trouble because the debt starts to compile and it's really hard to dig out of that hole.
Oh, absolutely. When I first started Chasing a Dream, and it was years of seeing this happen to people over and over again at the hospital. Now, I didn't have Chasing a Dream when I was working there, obviously, but I I did a lot of volunteer work. And so I got to know families, we shake families boating, and I volunteered for an organization that did that. And so I got to know these families really good, and I got to know them over the course of they're pretty much their journey. And even back then I was just blown away by how soon they were just devastated. And they'd be telling me the stories, and I just wasn't like I couldn't even really comprehend it. That, because I'm looking at them, I was like, and they're giving me these bills and this reality, and they're like, no, this is reality of illness in this country. And, so fast forward, then I have Chasin a Dream, and now these people are bringing me those and their stories. And like, there's so many homeless people now and they're homeless because of their child's illness. That just, to me, it's just heartbreaking.
Absolutely. And we hear of these families where they're living in their vehicles because of the fact of the transportation, and they've lost their home, and it's just the easiest way for them to be able to get to each and every one of those appointments.
Yes. Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. And we'll get calls and, no, I haven't eaten. I can't eat. And we don't have any money. And I'm just like, okay. So we created a resource guide, actually, which we need to put a lot of this stuff on our website. We'll have to get a financial tab on there. But it's a resource guide for like food and emergency things, in addition to other resources that they provide. Other places will provide financial assistance, but it's unheard of, isn't it? Like one day you're fine, and then the next, and of course, as a mom, you're going to do anything, right? So you're not going to eat, you're not going to, get your hair done, your nails done. You're not going to do anything like that. And pretty soon it's a choice, like who eats?
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think too, just realizing that, a plastic credit card is not a good crutch.
No.
Because I've seen that, unfortunately, too, where it just, kind of, again, they're necessities for the majority of the charges that are there. But at the same time, it really can just put such a burden on the family and take an additional enormous amount of time to get back onto the right page.
Yeah. Because that's just going to put you further and further into the hole. It's, there's that one's a tough one. So let's kind of turn it to where, to the family that has assets and they're doing just fine, and their child gets a lifelong illness, disability. How do they protect what they have? Because you're going to use up your out of pocket on most insurances. If your child's inpatient for, we have kids that are inpatient for 6 months, that's done, so if you have those assets and you have the savings and you have someone that you would be dealing with, how do they protect that?
It's definitely with schedule an appointment with their trust and estate attorney. That's going to be rule number one, because of course, kind of, again, bringing this back, if your assets are titled in your individual name, let's say something happened to you and that your child still needed someone there and they needed access to those particular funds. Those, if they're in your individual name, are going to end up in probate and going to be going through that process for at least over a year.
Yeah.
So these are the type of things that I see that families, especially with children that are battling, just going through any type of life-threatening illness, is just having access to those funds. Because even the families that are able to provide, if something were to happen, gosh forbid, then they're not going to be able to access those funds. And of course, that's going to be a direct impact on the child itself, especially if they're going through treatment at the time.
Okay. So, that's such a tough one, right? Because we even get families that have significant assets that will come to us, and you're kind of like, well, you don't really need it, right? You've got the financial assets for that. They need other services that we have, but I find that one's always a tough one for me to address, because you don't want to be like, hey, you have money, because it's still impacting you. It's impacting you the same way, because you live to whatever level of money that you have.
Well, and I think Chasing a Dream has done such a great job at navigating this and being able to support the entire community, no matter what the family's balance sheet or bank account looks like, because you provide resources. And it's not always just a tangible resource. It's going to be the resources of, hey, you might want to go to this food shelter this week because I heard that, they've got this great sourdough bread that was left over from somewhere else. Yeah. Or, I know an individual at FPL that could possibly look at your electric bill to do some type of deferral. So I think that those are all kinds of things that, again, I know today we're talking about finances, but at the same time, just the financial resources that can be helpful for any individual.
Yeah, no, you that's a great point, Tara. That's, so on our website, which is chasinadream.org, there are resources there. We have resources that are not only South Florida based, because there are plenty of, especially oncology practices, businesses out there, nonprofits that will help families with children with cancer, which is fantastic. There's a lot for them. There's not a lot for like seizure. Well, there's nothing for seizure disorder, or, you're in a car accident and now you're paralyzed, or, a multitude of other illnesses. So those resources are there. And I encourage everyone, if you have a child with cancer or with any lifelong disability, go on there and see if there's something on there, because you can advocate for yourself. And there are a lot of resources, like I said, and we have even nationwide resources, but I think we need to put some resources on there on where to get some financial assistance and more in the counseling end, right? I mean, absolutely. And those have to be out there. There's places, I know when you do your taxes, if you're a lower income or you don't have, so they must have that. I'm gonna have to look into that one a little bit more.
And to that point too, I think that something that gets overlooked a lot in regards to just going back to the trust and estate and kind of having your documents in line.
Yes.
I know it's, again, something else that's very intimidating of, what's a revocable trust? What do I need to do?
Sure.
But one of the main things that I've seen clients run into, and especially with children that have survived some type of a long-term illness, mm-hmm. is when they're getting ready to go to college, make sure that you have that HIPAA form signed, because if not, if let's say that they go off to college and they have that seizure and they're, 2-3 hours away, whatever it may be, you're not getting any information because they're 18.
Oh, right.
And so it's definitely something that, yes. I have a 17-year-old son. I will be doing that before he goes to college, yes. because it's something that, again, as a parent, you don't think about it often, but all of us have kids that have went away or, right. done their thing. And as soon as they're 18, the HIPAA laws come into play. And so therefore the information can't be released.
Yeah, that's right. That is so true. I know my son had an accident and after he was 18 and they're like, sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great information. Gosh, see, there's two. No, we can stop again. No. Oh my gosh. So Tara, what would you say to parents who feel guilt or shame about not being able to financially be prepared for the situation they find themselves in?
I take it back to when you think about having a child. So you always say, okay, I want to financially prepare myself to have my first child. I think the majority of individuals at least try and tell themselves that. And it never works.
Never.
So therefore, with the shame and, not wanting the help, everyone is there to help. And there's a reason why you and I are sitting here today and why, you founded Chasing a Dream, and the impact you've made on this community is because there's individuals that want to help. And so being able to know that, again, it's not just you, and finding that community of other like-minded individuals that are going through a very similar situation as you. And yes, they might not on the financial side be in the same aspect, but at the same time, those resources that are being provided can be tailored to each family and to be able to be the best beneficial outcome for the children.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as moms, right, we're naturally have that guilt.
Right.
And we think, oh gosh, why didn't I do? And that's something that I think we all feel, right? Like, I mean, even if you have an adult child, I think that's something that's just put into the mom brain, which is another thing with Mindful Haven that we have to get away from that, because our mental health and our well-being is crucial for them, right?
Absolutely. And, being able to sit in on the Mindful Haven summit that you had done here
Yeah,
a few
we
months
were
back
talking
and
about that.
seeing the moms and seeing their reaction and them taking notes and feeling that it was their day and their mental awareness day and being able to, I heard many of the women, this is the first day I've been away from my child in years, and to take some time for themselves to educate themselves, but also just to be able to take a deep breath and just take a look back at the big picture and to know that they have that support system around them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. We were talking about that at the previous podcast, and you have to be healthy in order for them to be healthy. And I wonder, doesn't that then lead into you as a parent can teach your child all of these financial things that, like, I know I'm totally one of those kids that was just not prepared for life. I was just winging it. I think I still am. But that's important, right? And it's a learning thing, I think, too, especially their story. So their story becomes how they can even change that story and the financial aspect of it. Yeah, because they would have gone, they know that you're not eating and that we can't do this. But, when it's all said and done, maybe that's a learning tool as well. Like, okay, look, we're going to start a savings program so this never happens again and doesn't happen to you again, doesn't happen to the next generation. We're going to break that cycle.
Well, I think that one of the best things, and again, it's going to be age dependent on the child, but getting them involved is actually very key to your success, because therefore you've also got someone else keeping you accountable. Yeah. And I think for young children, it's great to kind of put it into 3 buckets for them. Okay. We have a save, we have a spend, and then we have a share. Of course, the share turns into philanthropy later on down the road, but those 3 buckets are able to, even if it's $5, let's say, okay, you know what? You can save $2 so that you can, go buy that new toy that you want. $1 you're going to share. So you can either, give that to an organization, and then the other one you're going to save because you want to go ahead and make sure that that's going to eventually grow and you'll be able to buy the bigger toy. And being able to kind of provide those 3 different areas is really defining for a family, because again, when the young child that's, coming out of chemo and all they want is the, $20 milkshake that looks, with all the sprinkles and everything else, and letting them know that, hey, that's going to be, a lot out of that savings account. Yeah. So those are the little things that, again, I know we want to give our kids everything in the world. You do. But I think just having an understanding as a family around the finances really, really kind of, one, I'll be honest, as a mom, it avoids a lot of fights, Yeah. So is that what you do then? Like, so when they get their allowance, it goes into the 3 buckets, or how does that work? I do. So, and majority of banks that are out there, they're going to have these buckets already established for any type of minor account. So these are great tools. Really? They'll have, where it's for the child. And again, there's no minimums on these things. So take advantage of it. There's no fees, and they'll just say, do you want to have that into your save, spend, or, or they can, there's not a share usually, but at the same time, you can do that on your own. So these are all things that I do with my children. And then I think for older children, get them involved, especially, exactly. We're going out, and this is a perfect example. My 11-year-old, he really, really wanted to buy 1 stock for his birthday. And I told him, okay, well, he said McDonald's was too expensive, because I told him he was not allowed to go over $100. And so he bought Roblox. And of course, it's the behavioral science, of just these kids. He knows where that stock trades on a daily basis, just because of the facts. It's fun to get them involved and to be able to understand kind of, again, what we're looking at or what individuals are looking at when we say we're investing in a market. That's a great idea. I mean, and especially the Roblox thing, right? Because it's something they can relate to, rather than, okay, you've got some in, DVG and it's like, what is that? And what do I care? Because it doesn't mean anything, right? But if you go Roblox or, Chipotle. I mean, they love Chipotle. I mean, that's, it's these things that I think can really make a difference in just the overall financial education, and being able to kind of steward that through and to, along the way, parents are still learning too.
Yeah.
It's something that, again, I've been in the industry for 20 years and I continue to learn each and every day with just the changing of the overall macro economy.
Tara, this is all fantastic. I think what we have to do is just bring you in and just meet with all the families every time.
Always happy to help in any way. That's something that, again, I really take pride in, is being able to provide some of my expertise back to individuals that really are just needing some either education or just help. Yep. And, a second set of eyes never hurts anyone. So that's something that, again, feel free to help any of the families.
That's so nice. I'm thinking, one of our brainstorming things is we have the packet for Mindful Haven is maybe we make a fun type of booklet or something that's, financial, and it's just has some of these things that you can do and that can help the families, because some just don't have the knowledge because they're young or they don't have the income, but a lot do. And it's, that's also something to maybe, we'll have to brainstorm this when we can come up with something like that makes it Finances 101, but readable and understandable, and maybe little goals too.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely. And I think it just depends. They always mention the sophistication level of individuals, but I don't think it's sophistication level. I think really what it comes down to
knowledge, right?
It's just, and being able to have it explained to you in a way that makes sense. I deal with very sophisticated investors and, they're in the financial world themselves, but sometimes it just takes another person to explain something in a way that resonates with you to really kind of sink in and make sure that it's an actual benefit rather than someone just talking at you.
Exactly. It's like having your favorite teacher, you can go into a class and they would make everything be, just, okay, yeah, I get that. Now I'm going to be an astronaut,
yes.
And then then you go into science and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
So, changed my mind. Oh my gosh. So what's the one piece of financial advice you wish every family knew before facing a medical crisis?
I would say that, again, going back to you're not alone, that I would say that the initial shock is going to be all focus on the child. And that's, of course, going to be the main priority. What I will say, though, is that the financial conversation comes into play very quickly after that, because, again, how we had discussed where the expenses are going up and the income is possibly coming down with the additional time that you're spending with the children. So I would say the one piece of advice that I could give to any family that's going through any type of hardship with a child that's battling a life-threatening illness is the fact of just grabbing a hold of the resources that are around you and really kind of allowing that community to wrap their arms around you and your family, and to just educate yourself with any resources that are available out there.
Yeah. Thanks. And how can families work with a financial advisor, even if they feel they can't afford one right now?
Yeah. So walk into any bank branch. So there are advisors that are in the branches. And so they're going to be the ones that can open a brokerage account for you or open a money market account like we had talked about. So what you can do is there's individuals in there that have the expertise. So again, it's not like you have to go to a financial advisor that is going to be managing, large foundations or institutional type clients. Just walking into your local bank branch and telling them, this is what I want to do. I want to open an account, and they can provide that education for you as well, so that it's not as intimidating or scary when you're going in and saying, listen, I have an extra $1,000 and I don't want to lose it, but I also want to make sure I'm being smart with my money.
Exactly. Yeah. And finally, what words of hope or encouragement would you offer to families listening who are currently struggling?
Yeah, this is, I think, the hardest piece, because there's always that time where you really feel that you're never going to recover. But it's something that I will say, there are options out there, and everyone does recover in some shape or way. It's something, again, going back to looking at where you came from, where you're going, and then how you perceive yourself on the other side. And a lot of times it's so difficult to even think about that other side when you're going through all of this, but just really continuing to stay strong. Obviously have your priorities of health, happiness, family, and then making sure that you're making those right financial decisions along the way so that when you're on the other side of this, you're able to celebrate as a family.
Exactly. I mean, that's so crucial. What you're saying is visualize it, right? So while you're going through it, visualize that you're through it and everything's coming at these families, your child's health, the siblings, your finances, everything, visualization and gratitude, and whatever moment you could carve out for yourself and just visualize that and see that, because like you said, you will come out of it. And then there's resources. And speaking of those resources, on the Chasin' a Dream website is our critical need paperwork. So families need to fill that out, because then we can evaluate it and be able to help navigate you through this journey and find the resources for you, which I think is one of the things, at Chasin' a Dream we're so proud of, is the fact that we've been able to do this and make this impact. So now with Mindful Haven, being able to bring in, the financial health, the emotional health, the physical health, and just bring that all together as we go through and after the journey. So, and a lot of that is after the financial journey. Well, now you're not alone. We have a huge community out there, and that's what we're building. And, thank you, because you're on our board, that this is our, the next phase of a program that we are doing. And we did set a goal of $500,000 in order to get this off, I think, I think that's a reasonable goal. And if anybody out there wants to donate to it, we would love that. ChasinADream.org. And you can reach us at Lori at ChasinADream.org. You can reach Terra, and it's TERRA at ChasinADream.org if you have any financial questions. And Terra, thank you. Really, thanks for doing this, because this is such an important part for these families. It's an important part for everybody, especially now. I mean, the economy and the cost of everything is so hard that, it takes whatever creativity and a whole mindset to navigate this right now. So compound that with, financial stress from an illness that, everything you provided today for everybody it's been amazing.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And of course, it was my pleasure, of course, being a part of the board, but being here today and just being able to share and just to reach out to more and more families. I think that, a venue like this is something that puts us on a platform to allow us to reach out to more families. Yes. And, again, I was able and privileged enough to see the first Mindful Haven Summit. And, I know it was a smaller scale, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to reach as many people as possible. But like you had mentioned, I think with the additional generosity of the community and being able to commit additional dollars, again, is just going to take this to the very next level and allow our families here in the community to have that peace of mind as well as their resources at their fingertips.
Yeah, I agree. And, the issues that we're talking about for the local community here in South Florida, it's everywhere. So it doesn't matter. You could be in California, you can be in Nebraska. It doesn't matter. Everybody that has a family in this situation is going through the same thing, and the resources are all there. So, so definitely, reach out. And Terra, thanks again. This has been awesome. And thanks everyone for listening.